quadrupled their production of plutonium. And plutonium has a
So hi there, I'm
huge
Trish
amount
Triumpho Sullivan.
of
I'm the
radioactive,
proprietor of Downtown Book and Sound,
isotopes
and
as
we're here with the
byproducts of
author
production.
Kay Smith-Blum
And
to do an
they
author event. And so she's
started
going to join us in just a minute. We're going to start off with a little bit of music by the Dan Beck Duo, and he's going to play a song called Tangles in honor of our author's book, which is Tangles, and it looks like it's backwards on the screen. Oops, I'll have to fix that. Okay, back in a sec, folks.
And they didn't want people to start to suspect that that's one of those stats they did it after dark. Well after dark, like usually like after 11 o'clock at night. And then the radioactive waste, some of it was kind of sludge, and they literally in the early days just tossed it into open pits, and they figured out very quickly as the sludge started to work its way through the bedrock into the aquifers that they really needed to encase it in concrete tanks. But then fast forward like 10 years, the concrete tanks were right. So all this shit is going on. Everything is classified. They tell nobody nothing. They warn no one of anything. And my characters in the late 1940s through 1951 start to realize how much damage is being done to the environment. Animals, plants, humans. And then they decide they're going to start to accumulate copies of classified documents so that they at some point can hopefully force the government to like this important people, right? Eventually my secretary, about 2 years into the quest, right, because she goes missing, nobody knows what happened to her. So she lived next door in one of the company houses because originally it was the government built town. In the 80s, when the duplexes, and it was
Based on a
dozens.
true story.
Everything in the street. Everything in the streets of my characters. But every
Like
event
somebody
that
went
happens.
missing that went looking for it.
Yeah. So anyway, so she lives next door to the Henson family. She's also married to the bad guy spokesperson for the company, who's responsible for telling everybody everything's fine, there's no danger to human health. And of course she knows that's a lie, right? Meanwhile, next door, the Henson family are there, and there's some kid, 17, 18 years old, and of course he has a crush on her because she's hot, young, cute, right? Any rebel in America, right? So they kind of bond, and he ends up going away to college after his father his health is really compromised. His father by radiation poisoning because his father also worked at cancer, and he goes away really angry because the company is keeping everything secret, denying that his father got sick because of stuff in the plant, and he's furious, and he ends up becoming a scientist, ends up going abroad for fellowship, and Mary goes missing in 1951 in Scotland, graduate fellowship. So he comes back to the Midwest almost a decade later and is called in to a situation on the Oregon coast because a whale is careened off the Oregon coast, and they bring it ashore and realize something's very wrong with the whale, and they call the scientists in, and Lou is among those because he's doing his doctorate at OSU, and they realize when they cut the whale open that the whale is filled with radioactive isotopes that can only have been produced in plutonium production. So it proves that radioactive wastes come all the way down the Columbia River, 300 miles to the mouth of the Columbia Pacific Ocean, and he seizes on that as his chance to prove the malfeasance at Hanford and avenge his father's death. And then during the course of his research, he discovers documents that are linked with Mary's disappearance. And you have to refer to it.
Well, that's all been live on the thing now, so everyone knows. So this is the song I was telling you.
I've been trying to wrap things up, what, when, where.
So here's the line.
And I've got no tangles in my hair.
Ooh, no new tangles in my hair.
Like,
And the beat goes on, the sun comes out again.
she was just confused on where
Don't need
Who has the picture with we writers? Let's do it.
I happened to be in a writing group with Scotty, and
You ready?
Yes.
She's an artist. Okay, I'm in the group. You know, Stab's an artist, so I did Stab.
Come on in.
I think so. She's not.
Okay, everyone look up.
Wow! Oh, dear. Are you okay?
Oh, yeah. That was exciting. What would happen was something. Yeah, there we go.
That was live. It's gonna be good on the live.
Hi, guys. That was live.
We're okay.
So, heads up.
And I've got no tangles in my hair.
Thank you. Yay!
Yeah, you're an artist.
Exactly.
Stab is my former graphic design student, and is a Hartnell student, so I wanted to.
I'm a Hartnell student. I'm a Hartnell professor.
Exactly. So exciting.
Yeah, so right, they see each other.
So should I bring a stool over?
Come on over.
Okay. Where am I? Maybe I'll just stand.
No, you're going to be right here. It's going to be hard for you to stand. It's going to be hard for you to be in the screen if you're standing.
Okay.
So we're basically, here's the camera.
Hi there.
So we're right here. So you're going to be scooting in and leaning over. So
Okay. I think you're going to have to turn the camera a little bit. There we go. Oh, that's perfect.
So basically, kind of lean in a little bit so we can.
Okay.
There we go. So I think we can see all the tangled webs here. Although weirdly, it's like the camera has gone backwards. Usually it does a flip, so we can see so that we can see all the. Let me just take a quick look and see if I can get it before we. I don't think it is gonna to reverse it because it's supposed to reverse automatically when we're on air. Well, you guys, I'm Trish Triumph Sullivan, and Dan. Maybe you could shut the front door because you've got someone deciding they're gonna like do their motorcycle out in front, I guess. So anyway, I'm Trish Triumph Sullivan, the proprietor of Downtown Book and Sound, and with me tonight is Kay Smith-Blum, and she is the author of a new book just released called Tangles. I'm sorry that it's backwards. We'll have to figure it out how to flip this camera because it didn't seem to go right today. And Kay's here to talk to us about her book. She's here doing a book signing tonight. Little author event at the bookstore here in beautiful downtown Salinas. And so we're welcoming Kay to our store, and thank you for being here.
Thanks. I'm having a ball.
Oh,
and I
good.
think I've eaten all the cheese. I'm sorry.
No, we have more. We have more cheese. Don't worry. We've got the cheese. So I'd like to ask you a few questions to start out with. So tell me where you're from originally.
So I'm originally from Austin, Texas, but I married a Northwest boy. And he had gone to the University of Washington and came to Seattle and stayed. And here I am, a Northwesterner after 4+ decades.
Awesome. So how are you enjoying being on the West Coast?
Oh, I love it. I would never go back. Never go back to Texas. It's too hot.
I hear you. I'm from Arizona originally, so I'm definitely I'm a desert girl, but I like having nature's air conditioning.
Yes.
Which is what we kind of have here on the West Coast.
Right.
little
Right.
nature's air. We don't have to have air conditioning like we used to there. So you this is your debut novel.
Yes.
What got you into writing? What inspired you to do this?
So we had a retail fashion store for several decades and miraculously sold our store in 2016. But prior to that, I had always written, and I wrote a novella when my boys were young because we ended up having twin sons after having a first child, and we really had such a crazy time when the twins came along. They were a huge surprise, and so I wrote about that. And I wrote a novella, but it was just for family. And then we published a magazine for many seasons, and I edited and wrote parts of the magazine that we sent out every season. And all along the way, I was just kind of making notes about this and that. And then I found my birth family because I was adopted when I was 12 days old. And it turned out my birth mother had a wild and woolly story to tell. So my first manuscript was trying to tell her story, and I never could quite get it right. So I put that in a drawer and I started on another Texas story. But a couple of literary agents told me that while it was a terrific tale and they really liked my writing, they didn't think it should be my debut for a variety of reasons. And I agreed with them. And so they said, "What else have you got?" And I had nothing. But very quickly, about 2 or 3 days after having that conversation, I had this weird dream about a mass of red hair floating on the water. And in my dream, I said out loud, "It's not wet." And I woke up and I thought, that's weird. And I wrote it down in my dream journal because I have a poet friend who told me to start keeping a dream journal. Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah, you never know. And then that same afternoon, I ran into a friend who was born and raised in Pasco, which is part of the Tri-Cities in Eastern Washington, and they surround the southern border of the Hanford Nuclear Reservation, which is where they produced all the plutonium for the U.S. bomb arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And today, every bomb that we have in our arsenal is got plutonium fuel in it that was processed at Hanford.
In Hanford.
Right. And during the course of that, they created a huge amount of radioactive waste that was released into the air, the water, the soil without the public knowing. And this went on for almost 5 decades.
And this is a true story.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's true.
Okay.
That's really true. I mean, the government cover-up was huge and secretive, and they didn't want initially anybody else to be able to get the bomb before the U.S. And God forbid they had, we wouldn't have won World War II. But then they very quickly rolled into the Cold War, and so the secrecy remained.
Right.
Putting lots and lots and lots of folks in danger, not to mention animals and livestock and just the environment in general, right? So this friend had been born and raised in Pasco, which is one of the Tri-Cities around Hanford. And I knew her mom had been suffering from breast cancer. And I asked how her mom was doing over the course of our cocktails that evening. And she said, well, she ended up having to have a double mastectomy. And I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry that your family had to go through this and that your mom's had to go through this." And she said, "Well, that's what happens when you live near the area."
The area. Ooh, the area.
And I was like, "What?" And she said, Hanford. And I thought, okay, I know about Hanford because during my school board days, I ran for office at the same time that Jerry Pollitt, the 46th legislator, was running. And he was running specifically because he wanted to codify into Washington state law all the protocols that the feds and the state had agreed to around the Hanford cleanup. There are 56 million gallons of nuclear waste in the Hanford reservation, and none of it is going to go away anytime soon. This is radioactive isotopes that last for thousands of years.
Yeah, so their plan is to shoot it to the moon or some stupid thing.
Well, they've got a lot of different ideas.
They have
a lot of different ideas. I'm just not sure
any of them are
viable, right? But I knew about it because Jerry had been talking about it on the campaign trail, right? And so I kind of made a mental note to call Jerry. And then I had the dream again. And then the very next day, after having the dream again, and this time it was much more definitive, I ran into another guy I'd known for a long time, but he was born and raised in Richland. And I said, "Hang on, I didn't know you were from Richland." And he said, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Did your dad or anybody in your family work at Hanford?" He goes, "Everybody worked at Hanford." I said, "Did you ever call it the area? And he goes, yeah, that's all we ever called it. Nobody ever called it Hanford. And they used to pick up my dad's urine off the front porch in a milk bottle. It was kind of like the ice cream man coming around. I still
But it
remember
was
the
urine
date.
in the milk bottle.
Right. Because they were
testing.
they were monitoring the radioactivity levels in workers, right?
Right.
And that was it for me. I raced home. I went down a Google rabbit hole about Hanford during World War II and the Cold War years, and I emerged 9.5 months later with an idea for a storyline and characters. And
With your baby.
yeah, I
you
did.
Were, you were past due for that baby.
I was. Exactly. So,
Oh wow, what a great story to have that inspiration kind of come and just kind of hit you in the face almost.
Exactly. You never know where a good
You
story is
never
going to come
know where
from.
Yeah. Wow, that is really amazing. So when you first found out about it, where like you really had you knew about Hanford, but you didn't know any of the other.
I had no idea what had happened there during the Cold War years. And the more I read, the more I couldn't believe it. It was like, you can't make this stuff up, right?
No, right.
It's so wild. And, the amount of people that were put at risk and the amount of families that ended up having complete families, everyone in the family, whether they were a 2-year-old that had childhood leukemia or an 8-year-old grandmother that suddenly had thyroid cancer. I mean, it was just stunning. And people started to stand up and say, something is wrong, but the secrecy was there.
Yeah.
And they didn't release any of the classified documents until the late 1980s.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that would be, of course, because they don't want anyone to. I mean, it reminds me, we just had the on the over the air TV. They did a showing of the movie Them.
Yes.
And as a little kid, I remember when Them came on TV, a black and white movie about giant ants that were the result of nuclear testing in the desert. And of course, this little girl sees the ants, and all she can do is scream, them. And of course, that's what I always think of as like some horrible thing. Not so much people getting, cancer or dying from diseases, but from some horrible mutation that takes over. So that's kind of the sci-fi, result. But the reality is actually kind of worse in a way.
No, it's the truth is that there were a lot of deformities in animals, whether they were farm animals or whether they were wildlife. And the Yakima Reservation, is on the north end of Hanford, and the Columbia River has been their traditional fishing grounds forever. And they were reporting to the government in 1944 and 5 that they were finding fish in the Columbia with no fins or no eyes. So, I mean, from the very beginning.
From the Columbia River. So that was polluted the entire watershed then.
Right.
The same thing happened in St. Louis. I just heard a report on NPR.
Yeah, they've had a nuclear waste dump in St. Louis for decades. And there's an entire town. I'm trying to think what the name of the town is. It's a suburb of St. Louis. It's very close to the heart of St. Louis. Yeah, that everyone in town is ill. Everyone.
All kinds of mutilations.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So this is the government not being honest with the citizens in a way.
Well, in the early, like I said, in the early years, you understood it. And certainly during the Cold War year, there was such a layer of fear that you kind of understand it. But then it went on and on and on. Right.
Yeah. They're not protecting the people anymore. And, and so that's
right. But they did do things like, when the river was getting particularly warm and they were starting to find a lot of, deformed animal life, both in and out of the river, right? They would put an ad in the Richland newspaper and say that the river was restricted in certain areas you couldn't fish in those areas. And they would publish it in the newspaper, kind of a warning without the warning. But it was like, okay, so like the fish don't swim and the river doesn't flow.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, all of that's in the book. It's really, and so you feel when you're reading the book, you feel like you're in there. You're like the bus driver driving a busload of Hanford employees to the front gate.
To the
You're
front
like the kid, you know, who's living next door,
So
right?
this book deals with all of that that
Right.
happening
It just
there
puts a human face on every
on all of it.
single event.
That's really interesting because I've spent some time on the Columbia River Gorge, especially near the Gifford Pinchot National Forest,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of there's a lot of indigenous people that,
Yes.
like you said, that live there. Their livelihood is from the rivers,
Right.
not just the Columbia, but the ones that feed into the main river there, and so that's pretty sad
Yeah.
and scary that
Yeah.
that
So
this-
Luke, my main protagonist, who grows up to be a scientist so he can avenge his father's health problems, his sidekick is Walker, who is an indigenous native of the area, part Yakima, part Wanapum. And he gives a really interesting additional layer to the plot line, particularly from that indigenous side of things.
Awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for that kind of that background on it, because this is really important stuff because it's still there.
It's still there.
It's still there.
It's
So
the largest environmental disaster site in the Western Hemisphere.
yikes.
Yikes.
I thought everything was down in New Mexico for some reason.
No, Hanford's twice
I'm
the size.
thinking Area 51, right?
Right.
You know, with
Yeah.
the
No.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no.
that's the UFOs.
Yeah.
I know, but I've always thought that was where we did
Yeah.
like that in the Bikini
Yeah.
Islands. That
But
we
I
did
wanna-
most of the.
Yeah. I want to emphasize, though, this is a very human story. This is a deeply human story, and it really shows, you know, how what the costs are, you know, for freedom, for love, for loyalty. It really shows those costs,
Yeah.
along with the solace of, you know, family and nature. So.
Wow, that's great. Well, you know, this has really been wonderful. I'm wondering if you would be willing to do a little reading from your book.
Oh, right now?
Yeah, we could just do something brief so that we can have. Is there a passage or something that you feel like we would really would really give us a little flavor from your story?
Let's see.
A little flavor teaser.
Let's see. How about I just start with them finding the whale? So, oh wait, no, I'm just going to do the prologue. Let's do
Oh, yeah,
that.
prologue's good.
So Mary is the other protagonist, and she's the secretary I was talking about. And her story begins basically in 1947. So this is late summer, 1947. Scientists and supervisors, workers and wives, shopkeepers and servicemen packed the still new town auditorium. Toe taps from teenagers and tots echoed off the pine rafters above, and puffs of Lucky Strikes and Camels trailed out the double doors, thrown open to capture any breeze. The Richland Singing Cops entertained during band breaks, their four-part harmonies threading the night in a prelude to the final set. Amid the not-so-lonely Saturday night, my next-door neighbors, the Hensons, glided across the crowded dance floor. Slow, slow, quick, quick, foxtrotting to Benny Goodman's solo. Well, not that Benny. Our Mr. Goodman supervised a production line at Hanford Engineer Works, a.k.a. the area. On the weekends, he played clarinet to Mr. Clark's sax and Mr. Joseph's horn. Mr. Joseph was no Bix Beiderbecke, but he had a feel for the shifts, jazz in his soul, and beer, and only God knew what else in his belly. Mr. Drummond, and I'm not making this up, was the drummer. Mr. Clark winked my cue, and I angled my shoulders to the spotlight with hands hidden in the folds of my swing skirt. My gaze floating above the crowd, I aimed for a cross between Billie Holiday and Rosemary Clooney, and to, just for a moment, forget where I was. My home-permed waves fell across my cheek, concealing the fresh bruise. The crowd wanted an encore, and so we gave them Carmichael and Parrish's tune to dream on. Folks spilled out of the hall, inhaling the sage-soaked night. Mr. Clark's teenage daughter, Janet, dawdled behind her family, her blonde ponytail swinging and petticoat rustling. She kept turning back to look at her fellow. A prolonged goodbye, the kind where feelings were bigger than words. Calculated releases rode the breeze south from the area, across the expansive desert that bound eastern Washington. The mix of gas and particles lit up the moss along the banks of the Columbia, where salmon fed on their way to Baker Bay. The breeze torqued and stole its way to northeast Spokane and Idaho, where dairy cows and wool-laden sheep grazed, and human young slept, eider-down quilts tucked tight. The wind whipped up on a ground level, taking the loose dirt with it, shooing folks inside their government-built houses. And a star shot across the sky, doling out wishes, but mine wouldn't be granted because I just wanted to go back, undo that moment when I said yes to the man who brought me here, where the stardust was lethal, and so was he.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
So that's Mary.
Well, I can't wait to read the rest of the book now.
Yay!
Well, so do we have any questions from the audience that's here for the author before we end our?
How long was the journey to write it?
So I did 9.5 months of just solid research, and then I spent another 3 months plotting the book and developing character backstories. And then I would say that the first draft came together super quick. Like I had a first draft within probably about 4 months. And then of course it went through a million revisions and 1,000 beta readers and a bunch of different editors. And I'll be forever grateful to Will Allison for being my developmental editor. And he really pointed out so many things that really made the story so much stronger.
That's you have to have a good editor.
You do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's pretty obvious when you read writing where it has not been edited or it's only been edited by the
Right.
author.
Right.
And I know from myself, just from doing copywriting, that having at least a second pair of eyes.
Yeah.
Because once you've written something, you've read it, reread it, and it's in your brain that you
Right.
miss those little
Right.
small things, or sometimes big things,
Right.
because you understand what you've written, but
Right.
maybe the other person
Right.
hasn't.
Right.
So you spent 9 months, and then
9 months of research,
and then 3
3
months
months
of plotting.
plotting it and creating, character backstories.
And then how long for the actual writing?
The first draft I finished in about 4 months. It
Okay.
really wrote itself. And let me just say to all the writers out there, don't be a pantser anymore. I was a pantser with my first 2 manuscripts, and they are so much lesser of stories because I didn't plot them out. Yeah. When you plot it, it really helps the story come
So
together.
plotting would be similar to doing a storyboard, like for say
Yeah,
a
an outline.
film, like
Yeah.
it's an outline.
Right.
So you're plotting the outline.
Yeah. So you have different beats
just
to
like
the story. Right.
Storyboard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have these important little chapter ideas
Right.
that are placed in within the story and having
Yeah.
it going forward.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That's awesome.
I so appreciate you having me.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I just want to say thank you for making the trek, for sharing your wonderful book with us. I'm excited to read it.
Yay.
I'm sad that I didn't get to read it before. I do try to read before we have an author in, but it did not work out. But for sure, we're going to read it because this is a subject that's really dear to my heart. And that when I say dear to my heart, is that the caring for the earth and our stewardship of the earth is so important, and it's important to know and to not just be aware of, but to be able to be proactive in protecting not just our citizens, but the earth itself from
Exactly.
these kind of things.
Exactly.
And it's good that you brought it because I had no idea. This is all news to me. So it's kind of like so it is a historical fiction then.
Technically historical because it's set in the Cold War, and that's technically 50 years ago, if not longer now. And so that's technically historical, but it reads more like a thriller, suspense, mystery. And there is a wonderful love story threaded through it.
Oh, good. So it's
yeah, a little bit for everybody.
Got some romance. You've got the mystery and the suspense.
Yeah.
But it's based on true facts of
Yes.
things that really happened. So
Yes.
it's kind of a good raising awareness for
Yes.
folks. So,
Yes.
Kay, thank you for being here.
I have a
Thank you.
follow-up question.
Oh, one follow-up question.
Yeah, so from start to finish with all the editors, because we always get people coming in who think they're gonna write a novel in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How long did the whole process take?
For Tangles, it went faster than my first two manuscripts. My first manuscript, I was really learning a lot and taking a lot of craft classes. So
On
that took
camera.
almost 5 years to
On
even
camera.
write the very first
So you're on
draft,
camera.
right? The second manuscript took about 3.5. And Tangles ended
I'll
up
talk to you
from research to plotting to first draft was about 16 months. So it made me understand how there are writers out there that can produce a book every year, but you have to get that rhythm first. So if you're a first-time
you needed those
writer,
two manuscripts to be able to do it that fast.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I
Exactly.
understand why
Right?
you're bringing that up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So if you're a first-time writer, it's going to take a while.
Well, yeah.
And don't rush it.
Don't
Like
rush
have
it.
everyone give you feedback, because if one reader that you've asked to read your tale says, oh, there's this one thing that isn't clear, there are 1,000 other readers out there in the universe that it won't be clear to either. So
Mhm.
every bit of feedback that you get is so valuable in terms of making your story strong.
Right, because you're clear on what you think you're thinking, but making sure that the reader is
Yeah.
on the same page as you are.
Yes, on the same
I-
page.
I
And
could-
with that,
could
with
not
that little
resist
pun,
it. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks
I
again.
really appreciate it. Once again, Kay Smith-Blum with Tangles, which is still written backwards.
exclusively in Salinas at Downtown Book and Sound.
So come and see us in person or online, and we thank you guys for being here. Okay, I look forward to seeing you again. We'll
Me too.
have to do this. Again for this book maybe, and for your next one,
Yes, I think
because I'm
so.
sure there'll be a next one. So thanks again. We're gonna say good night to everyone.
Good
If you
night.
have questions, do feel free to comment on Facebook or YouTube, and we will make sure and get back to you. So the book is available on bookshop.org and at our store. So look it up. Kay Smith-Blum with Tangles.
Thanks again.
Thank you guys. So let me end our session.
You guys are a good studio audience.
Well, we were following the applause sign.
Yeah.